Ahoy there, Kumi here! Today I'll be building the Keychron Q1, which is probably the most well received metal entry-level keyboard to date that is also meant to be in stock. The board is gasket mounted with a full aluminium body and a 75% exploded layout. It comes in 3 colorways: space grey, navy blue and carbon black, which was my color of choice. Aesthetically, it's your standard rectangle. However, you can interchange the top right key with a personal badge that can be customized on Keychron's website. It ships standard with an aluminium plate, however Keychron also offers brass, polycarbonate and FR4 plate options. The PCB is hot swap with south-facing LEDs, 5-pin switch support and VIA and QMK support. There is also a neat little switch next to the USB-C port that quickly switches between Windows and Mac layouts. The barebone version comes in a competitive $149 USD and the fully assembled version clocks in at $169 USD. The Q1 is often compared to the GMMK Pro as they're both meant to be budget in-stock boards coming from fairly large players in the market and share the same exploded 75% layout. Generally, the Q1 is seen as the better of the two due to being $20 cheaper, having gaskets that actually work, and halfway decent stabilizers. That being said, the Keychron comes with one glaring problem, sounding super hollow due to the pinging of the case. Fortunately, this is fairly easy to fix and for cheap, so stay tuned. The board comes well packed in a nice matte black box and the branding expected of a leading industry player. Lifting off the top cover reveals 2 pieces of protective foam before coming to the warning card and user manual. Next, we have the board itself in a branded plastic sleeve. Then comes the USB cable, which has the beloved aviator connector and cable coiling. The coiling could have been done better, but it's pretty good for something that is included in the box. Moving on, we have extra neoprene gaskets that have pretty good squish, and extra screws and rubber feet. Underneath we have the quick start guide, and under that is the keycap puller, generic switch puller, mini screwdriver and hex key. Overall, quite the pleasant unboxing. I wanted to give the NovelKey Blueberries a try, so these will be the switch of choice for this build. The Blueberries are a 5-pin tactile switch with a heavier 80-gram spring. The interesting thing about this switch is that it actually has 2 bumps, so to speak. One smaller one at the start and a more pronounced one closer to bottoming out. This might be why you can't spring swap the switch to a lighter weight without key return issues. Sound-wise, the Blueberries are pretty terrible stock. There is a lot of spring crunch and leaf ping as well as heavy scratchiness. Here is the stock sound test. Furthermore, while the housing is fairly tight with no noticeable north-south or east-west wobble, you can hear the top and bottom housing grinding against each other. To combat this, I actually opted to use the thicker Krytox 205G0 on the housing and stems instead of the thinner Tribosys 3203, as there aren't worries for loss in tactility due to the design and extreme inherent tactility of the switch. I also dip lube the springs in Krytox 205G0 instead of the usual 105G0 tub lube treatment due to the spring crunch issue. Next, I use TX Thin 0.125mm film to combat the housing grinding issue. Note that you won't be able to use any thicker film due to the tight housing, as it will cause the switch to not close properly. Here is the modded sound test. To disassemble, flip over the board and remove the 8 hex screws. Lift the bottom case and remove the 2 layers of foam. Now carefully remove the ribbon cable from the data board. Next, flip the top half over and carefully dislodge the PCB and plate combo from the top case. Finally, unscrew the 6 gold screws holding the PCB to the plate and separate the remaining parts. Mod-wise, we'll start with the stabs as always. The stock stabs have a bearable amount of tick and rattle, but that's not what I'm about, so I'll be swapping them out for some Durock screw-ins. I'm doing something a little different mod-wise, so I'll go through my process. First comes the wire balancing. Grab something with a flat surface and place the wire on it. Now, a lot of modding videos do this. I personally had trouble understanding how to wire balance just from sound, so instead I take the wire up to eye level and look for gaps between the flat surface and wire and bend as appropriate till I see no gaps and the wire is completely flat. Now grab some medical tape and cut it to size with enough width to wrap around the wire end approximately 1.5 times. I'll be doing this moving forward instead of the Holy mod, as I find that this method gets rid of the rattle and tick but doesn't mute the stabilizers as much as the Holy mod. Next, lube the inside of the housing and stem with Krytox 205G0. When inserting the stem into the housing, be careful to match the 2-hole stem side with the open housing side, otherwise the stab won't operate. Now lube the wire end generously with dielectric grease. I generally like to do the dip method as it gives a good amount of lube. Grab a brush and brush the excess around the bend, as this area has heavy movement as well. Finally, insert the lubed wire end into the open end of the housing and the bottom hole of the stem and click it in. On the PCB, I like to place some fabric tape under where the stabs will sit to absorb excess lube and some of the sound. Now align the hook end of the stab with the larger stab hole and clip in the stabs. Flip over the PCB and screw them in. I like to use washers just to be safe. Here is the modded sound test. Next we come to the force break mod to get rid of that awful hollowness. To do this, place a small strip of fabric tape next to each screw hole on the bottom case. To add some flex back to the board and change the sound profile a little, I'm going to remove the second layer of the case foam and add polyfill instead. Shout out to Alexitos who I've been binge watching recently. Lastly, we have the usual PE foam and tape mod. To reassemble, lay the PE foam on the PCB, then stack on the plate foam and the alu plate. Now flip it over and screw in the 6 gold screws. Next, I'm going to insert the switches while supporting the socket, as I've read that this prevents accidental popping of the sockets. Note that this does make the reassembly process a little harder. Now carefully slide the PCB and plate combo into the top case and reconnect the ribbon cable with the data board. Finally, pair the top half with the bottom case and screw in the 8 hex screws. For the keycaps, I chose the Akko neon set to give the black board some pop. Overall, I'm very happy with the board. Compared to my GMMK Pro, it's definitely a softer typing experience. After typing on the Blueberries for a bit, I felt something was a bit off with the acoustics, so I chucked in some Alpacas, which I much prefer. The Blueberries are poppier sounding, but I feel the board is more inclined to the creamy clacks that Alpacas produce. As always, any and all feedback is welcome. Next video will be up in 2 weeks. Sound test incoming in 3, 2, 1.